So calling to order the Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission for June 8th. And we just have a quorum here, but I'll do the roll call. Keith Allgood is not here. Tony Thompson. Here. Tony Gross. Here. Mike Vargas is not here. Lauren Hill. Here. Mike Patno, that's me. Craig Kitch is not here. Maurice Spafford. Here. And Bob Stoller is not here, so we have a quorum. Non-voting staff, we have Sharon Armstrong. Here. We do not have Dan Smolla, the engineer. And we have ex officio attendance, City Manager John Wallace. Here. And Attorney Martha Brooke Perry. Here. Thank you. So we have a quorum. And you have before you the May 11th Planning Commission meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve.
Second. Okay. Is somebody taking notes today? You are. Okay. I'll let you speak up if you didn't catch it.
I will.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Those minutes are approved, and we have for you today's agenda. Do we have a motion to approve it?
Motion.
Okay. Marie, pardon me?
We're sorry.
Oh, you want to amend it?
We would like to move the bylaw discussion to the end of the meeting if we could.
Okay.
So that we...
Happy to do that. Any problems with that from the rest of the commission to move the bylaws discussion to the end? Okay, so that means we're going to amend this agenda to move item.
I think it should
it's
be
under
C.
it's under B, but it's
C.
supposed to be item C, reconsideration of the bylaws with recommended amendments from the city attorney. So that item will be moved to the end of new business. It will become item D under new business. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve this agenda as amended?
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. This agenda is amended. So now we have the community input section. Can I see a show of hands on anybody who wants to speak during community input? Okay, sir. I see one. All right, so we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and just come to the podium and say your name and your address, and then go ahead.
Thank you. My name's Gordon Belt. Live at 424 Evergreen Circle here in Kingston Springs. My wife Tracy is here. We live in the Harpeth Meadows subdivision, and the question, well, not a question for this, but maybe a question later, is we have a street sign that's missing on Evergreen Circle. It's been missing for more than a year, and so we had approached the HOA first to find out why we didn't have a street sign, and after a while of back and forth, they told us the city considers Harpeth Meadows a private drive, and so they're a little hesitant about replacing a street sign. And I just wanted to find out from you folks, do you consider Harpeth Meadows a private drive? If so, what are the implications for that? This may be a conversation we need to have aside, but that was my main question, is that the HOA has told us this story, and I'm just trying to get y'all's
For 30 years.
yeah, we've been, my wife has lived there for 30 years. I'm going on 20. We've had streets paved. We've had speed limit signs changed.
Straight signs.
No problems, but all of a sudden now we're having an issue with a small street sign. So I just wanted to get your input on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just for, who will Mr. Belt contact within the city for that question?
Myself.
City manager?
And I think we spoke,
We have.
and I didn't get a call back, so I'm here. So.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Very
So-
good. I'll contact you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Mr. Belt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other community input? Okay, the community input section is closed. I have a statement here, declaration of conflicts, which is from our last signed copy of the bylaws. In the event any member shall have a personal interest of any kind in the matter, then before the Regional Planning Commission, he or she shall disclose their interest and be disqualified from voting upon the matter, and the secretary shall record in the minutes that no vote was cast. So that's just a statement. Now we'll go to old business. First item is Ellerslie PUD update. There's two parts under that: the stop work order issued 17 May 2023, and the grading plan and SWIP submissions and owner decision. So is that, Sharon, do you have that?
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month when we met, I opened discussion on the Ellerslie subdivision, and Mr. Main, who is the contractor's representative for Ellerslie PUD, spoke and said that they had submitted a new updated SWIP and set of plans. After the meeting, we received communication from the owner saying, we don't want that used, we don't want those plans considered. So John and I met with the contractor and with Mr. and Mrs. Merville, who are the owners of Ellerslie, and worked through that issue. The only submissions that will come to the Planning Commission or the city will be directly from the owner, Energy Fit Solutions, which is Mr. and Mrs. Merville. So we will no longer, we did not make any changes to anything that they did. We issued the stop in order for them to sort it out between themselves because it was really their discussion, not ours. And then the stop was lifted shortly after. All the solar and erosion controls on the original plan are in place now. Some of them could use a little maintenance. I'll touch base with them tomorrow on that.
Do we have questions for Sharon from the commission? Okay. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to old business item B, the Golf Club of DBI LLC. There's a couple items here. One is the staff inspection report, and then the other part is the master plan revision with the ARAP and PUD agreements under that part. Are you going to walk us through this?
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to deal with the staff inspection report. Within your packet, directly behind the agenda, you will see an erosion control and stabilization activities report that was submitted by Mr. Smith, who is the soil and erosion duty expert on site, with the activities that they proposed and were currently underway after the rain that brought 3.5 inches that resulted in the disposition of soil on the road and into the creek. So soil erosion measures were implemented. I inspected today. Didn't see any evidence of redeposit on the road surface at all. The bridge is now open. The signs are still up. The bridge is open and is being used by local traffic and also by the site traffic from the site. But within the packet, you can see the report from Mr. Smith. You can also see, these are not in color. I provided you with color pictures, if you remember last month, of the turbidity and disposition of soil into the waterway. Also in your packet is a EPSC report from the site monitor from 5/9/23. You will note in the first 3 sections where he checks the boxes, you will note that those were deemed to be insufficient. This was just prior to the rain. So I had a discussion with Mr. Smith. I had a discussion with Mr. Hooper as well. Some corrections have been made on site in order to address this, to strengthen the soil erosion controls. If you remember, we had a significant amount of tree fall in the area of land disturbance up on the top of the hill. There's a lot of tree fall in the area below. That tree fall is in the process of being cleaned up. It's my understanding the Golf Club DBI has contracted with someone to remove the tree fall, get it off of there, and then to stabilize that area. And there will also be some stumpage that will need to be removed. That is all being done under the auspices of our grading program that the city issued. The issues for the ditch line, the creek, and the road, while they're concerning to us, they're outside of our jurisdictional authority, as you're aware. So that was just a brief update on that item. The second item that you have on your agenda is for an ARAP that was applied for by the Golf Club of DBI in order to remove soil deposits from what they refer to as the 4-barrel creek that divides Mr. Summers' property from the DDI property comes down, flows under the road at the forward pipe area, and goes into the creek on the other side and eventually deposits into the Harpeth River. That permit was granted by TDAC for the removal of silt and soil deposits from the Four Barrel Creek, and there's a great deal of information in your packet. All of it is technical. I simply provided you with all of the information that led to the issuance of the ARAP, which is an Aquatic Resource Permit, water permit, in short term. So I provided you with that. The reason it's on your agenda, we have no control over this permit at all, but it does amend a portion of the PUD agreement. So we're keeping a running list of amendments for the PUD, and we just wanted you to be aware that you will need to vote to amend the PUD agreement between DBI and the city to recommend that amendment of this ARAP. And I would like to ask Mr. Cooper if he would come forward and explain to us kind of what the timeline is. When I first got this, it was their intent to start removal on May the 16th from the creek, but we couldn't allow that because it's not covered.
This is the silt removal.
Right. Silt removal, they needed training, and Jeff was cognizant that we needed to amend the PUD agreement to amend this permit as well. We're required by state statute to ensure that they get all state and federal permits before we can issue a permit. So we couldn't grant them permission to move forward until this body heard it and it's included.
Okay, so, again, hi Jeff. I know Mr. Hooper from church.
Absolutely.
So what is it that you want Mr. Hooper to explain to us?
Just briefly to outline, one, when you propose that this is going to start, how long it will take, and I think there's an acknowledgement from all parties that it will briefly be some increased turbidity or moving soil in the water, because once you stir up the bottom, that's going to happen. So I just want him to kind of give you an idea of how long this will take and when they anticipate it will start.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you. Jeff Hooper with Large Civil Associates. We did get this ARAP permit. We felt like the purview of approval between the top of bank and top of bank was from as TDAC's responsibility. So we provided that information to City Planner Armstrong, saying, hey, we're going to go do this work. But she also said she wanted to bring in front of this body, so we haven't proceeded with that work. We do have a specialized crew coming in to do that work. It is all going to be done by hand, shovels, those types of things, put in buckets and taken back and put in the appropriate locations for disposal. That work we think will take about 5 days to complete, so we'll be up and down the creek for approximately 5 days. We've got to get that crew scheduled again, so after tonight we will figure out the timeline of that, and we can report that back to Ms. Armstrong, let you guys know when we're planning on doing that work, because it will increase the turbidity as they're removing that material, and first flush afterward. We're expecting some more turbidity. So that being said, we can report back when that's going to occur.
Any questions for Mr. Hooper from the commissioners?
I think the last thing I'll note, we're kind of in a dry time, so we're hopeful to get in and get it
Right.
done kind of more during this dry time versus during the wetter part of the season.
So our role here is to recommend approval of adding that permit to the PUD.
That's correct.
For that purpose. Okay. Do we have a motion? So moved.
Second.
Second, okay. Do we have any questions or discussion on this motion? Okay. Did you have a question, Mark? Okay, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion passes.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
I did want to just ask Shane for my clarification.
Sure.
In the past months, we've been looking at lots of pictures of measures erosion control measures that DBI has been putting in place in response to each of these rain events, more and more stuff. And we've been kind of looking at that, and kind of we were seeing it, and then things were starting to work, etc. But it sounds like there's, now that the tree removal is going on, that's another potential issue.
Well, I think that the precipitator to that, Chairman Pat knows, was the straight line wind.
Right,
that
that knocked
pulled
the trees down, right. So that
So-
created the problem.
And with the tree fall that occurred, it was really significant in the area of disturbance, where the ground was disturbed on top of the hill.
Yeah,
So with those trees, some of them were so large, the root balls were in excess of 15 feet high, and all
Yeah.
the dirt was coming off of that and going onto the road.
okay.
And then in the next significant rain, I went out to do my inspection, which I do every time it rains, and some of the trees had come further down the hill. They had already cleared the ones that deposited on the road. So the decision was made by the golf club to begin the process of removing those fallen trees, and remove them from the hillside, so they would not continue to be a source of dirt that went into the ditch, over on the ditch, and then flooded the road on the other side. In doing that, one of my inspection days, the tree removal folks were out there, the folks that were hired to remove the trees, and have that discussion. And the gentleman flagged me down, asked me who I was. I explained to him who I was, why I was there. You know, he was doing his due diligence. Why are you on this driveway? So he explained to me that that should be done in stages. You know, not strip the hillside all at once. It should be done in stages. It should be done in dry weather. You know, then it should be stabilized. I thanked him for the information. Unfortunately, when the tree removal began in earnest and some of the stumpage was starting to be removed, we had 3.5 inches of rain in a very compressed period of time. All of that loose soil where the trees had been uprooted out of the ground by the wind slid down the hillside and deposited maybe about 16 inches of soil on the road. So, the wind we can't control is considered a weather event. It's not considered, and was not discussed by TDAC as a violation, straight line wind took trees down. Whether or not there was more tree fall in that area, I think is obvious if you ride the site, but it's not something that we can mathematically calculate. But in the area where the soil was disturbed at the top and top of the scalp, there was significantly more tree fall. So the fix for that is to remove what's fallen, and then to remove the stumps, because it's loose around the stumps, the dirt, and then stabilize it. You know, packing that area, rip-wrapping, much as they did on the other side of that driveway going up, rip-wrap to hold the ground, and then seed, straw and seed it, so that it grows in and holds it in place. So it started with the wind, and unfortunately ended with the rain. So those two events back to back made it very untenable. I don't know that you could foresee the wind was going to do that, but stabilization aside, I've had some discussions with DBI. We say, please don't strip the rest of this entire area. Do it in sections so that you can control it in case there's rain, because it rains this time of year frequently.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Any questions on that? I just wasn't clear on the
Yes, sir.
sequence. Okay. So are we finished with B and then A and B under that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we're moving on to new business.
Yes, sir.
All right. So first item on new business is Town of Kingston Springs plat acquisition of a portion of map 91 in Group D, parcel 39, and a replat of map 91, parcel 99. Is that something you need?
Yes, sir. There has been a request from the town to defer this until next month. There are some ongoing discussions between the town and Second South Cheatham to clarify some language in the transfer deed. So we just want to hold off on it for another month,
Okay.
with the town's permission.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's a city manager and attorney question. They'll need to formally request that. We can't postpone it another month, but they can.
Do we need to vote to defer that to the next month?
If they formally request it. Was that a formal request, John?
I, as the city manager of the town of Kingston Springs, formally request this action be deferred until next month.
So we'll need a motion.
Motion.
Motion to defer item 10A.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that is deferred. Item 10B, proposed minor subdivision, Aaron Stoll, map 99, parcel 1620 CC Road. It lies within Kingston Springs urban growth area.
If you'll remember, we deferred item B and C from last month because we still did not have all the signatures on the plat that were necessary. Mr. McCain is here tonight, and I'm assuming all signatures have been acquired with the exception of the Planning Commission Secretary.
Correct.
On item B. So staff has reviewed it, it's ready to approve it. It's a simple two-lot subdivision.
So the motion would be to approve item 10B, the minor subdivision. Okay, do you have a motion?
Yes. So moved.
Okay, and a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. That's item 10B. Item 10C is the last item under new business, except for the amendment of our bylaws. I'll go ahead with 10C, Sharon.
Thank you. Same circumstance here. We were waiting on signatures. Those have now been provided. It is ready to approve.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. If anybody here was here for anything else and wanted to step out before we get into bylaws review, you're welcome to, but we're going to start bylaws review. So I didn't want to have you tied up here. If you just want to.
Come on, Brian, hang out with us.
John?
I'm gonna say this is good.
John?
What's up, Bill Rogers from church? I've worked with that. Just feel bad for the last meeting. And I'm in church.
Good night.
Look over and I go, I know that. Boston secretary.
Oh, yeah, I forgot we changed.
Yeah, I'll try
I
it
think
again.
it's a friend of ours doing the 16,
Okay.
20.
And we have, so this is now reviewing the proposed amendment to the bylaws, which you have in your packet. Okay, we have a number of things in here. Right, okay, so you have two things regarding this in your packet. And I'll tell you I'm the culprit on two things being in here. The first item is what had been our bylaws, the last signed copy of our bylaws, which was dated February 8th, 2001. And I asked for these to be here because after we had that lengthy discussion last time, I realized we didn't have a trail between what our standing bylaws were during the discussion and what we were proposing. So I took these babies with a highlighter and I walked through them. And so I have a few questions that I'd like to ask first. And then we have, Martha Brooke had brought up a law change that affects one piece of this. And you may have a couple other questions. But I would recommend to the planning commissioners that in the future, if we're going to review any document like this, a governing document or something else of this nature, that we request a red line copy of it so we can see what the standing document is and see the changes right on it. And I would ask also that if the only thing that is available is a Xerox copy that cannot be downloaded into a rewritable PDF or Word doc, that somebody type it out so we can have a red line copy. I just don't think we should be trying to guess what we were referring to in legal documents. So, and I'm not a lawyer. I know that. Okay. So,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may respond to that. I have purchased a program that I can now take the scanned one, which is what we had,
okay,
put it into my computer and convert it to
a writable.
a writable document.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask, I think I have 3 questions from the 2001 copy, and they may be extraneous, but I just wanted to make sure I was covering these bases. So in the, okay, in the 2001 copy, under Section 8, Agenda, and these may be in here, I just couldn't find them. There's on the, I think it's the second sentence, it starts in the end of the 3rd line, it says, all items including subdivision, plat, zoning requests shall be submitted at least 15 normal business days prior to the meeting at which business is to be discussed, and then it goes on about the 15-day requirement. I didn't see that in the new copy. Was that changed at some point in the past?
It was taken from this document. It no longer resides there. It now resides in your zoning ordinance where
Okay.
submission is required and your subdivision regulations. It
Okay.
now dictates that.
Okay,
So
thank you.
this is not submission necessarily to the planning commission. This is for staff review. So now we have a broader one. If you remember back to, what was it, John, 3 years ago? Commissioner Clark wanted to broaden public notice. That discussion came to the planning commission, then went to the city commission. So now we have online for the use of the submitters, the developers, the surveyors. Online, there is, you will notice on your packet, actually on your agenda, you will have 2 dates on the first page of your agenda. One of them will be the date of the meeting, and the other one will be the submittal deadline.
Okay,
So the submittal deadline, because of advertising, because we don't have a local newspaper anymore, and because of expanded advertising, is now at the bare minimum 30 days rather than 15. So that was omitted from this document because
Okay.
it no longer complies with the circumstance that we have.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then, let's see. I actually found that one. Okay, so in the 2001 copy, there, section 17, is called hearings, and in the new copy there is something about meetings. See where the meetings is in the new version. I think it's, okay, here we go, meetings, Article 5. So I saw the thing on meetings, and I saw the comment in the new version on special meetings, but I did not see the words public hearings, which was in the 2001 copy. Is it important that the term public hearings be used? I didn't see them in the new document.
There's a couple of ways that we can look at this, and I think Martha Brooke and I both have probably reviewed state statute. You as a planning commission are technically not required to have a public hearing for a reason. Those are held with city commission.
Really?
If you want to have a public hearing, it's not, there's no established statute with regard to planning that requires the planning commission to hold it. You're a recommending body. So if you're going to establish it, as we did, I think we did once for the ARAP, we did a public hearing for the golf club project. You can establish them, but they're not consistently required. So it's your choice as to whether or not you wish to do that. But for a rezone or for a subdivision, they don't require public hearings.
Really?
By the
Not in
planning
this,
commission.
not in this one.
Not in this
body.
It would be in the city
They do
commission.
in the city commission.
Okay.
So there have been some tweaks over the years, Chairman, to planning statutes.
Okay,
And I think that at this one, I don't think it was so much a change to the laws, it was a misinterpretation
okay,
by the planning commissions that they were required to hold public hearings as well. They're not,
okay.
so it's up to you.
Thank you. So Martha Brooke, do you agree with that
Yeah, and
comment?
that's, and the old one, that's discretionary language anyway, and there says
It
it.
is.
It does say
it's
at its discretion. It does say
public
that.
hearing. So I think that's just intended to say, if you wanted to hold one,
Yeah.
with it, just like you guys did with the vehicle.
But would you agree it's unnecessary in our update to the bylaws? What, do you guys have any problem with that? Not being in the bylaws? Okay. It said.
No,
we couldn't-
it's, we have the option,
Yeah.
like if there was something that's very
By
contentious
state statute.
and we would want to have, we have the option of having a hearing, but it's not a requirement.
Well, it's not listed that we do have, it says we can call special meetings, but it doesn't say it doesn't say anything
You
about
can,
hearings.
and at the time that you call a special meeting, you can title it. When you clarify the golf club discussion, in that TDAC actually scheduled that public hearing.
So we can call a special meeting as a hearing?
Right.
No big, okay, I just want to make sure we
Okay, all
weren't,
right, so yeah.
we
it
weren't
would be
trapped in
semantics.
anything. Okay,
You could have a community kumbaya session.
Okay.
Call it that.
Well,
It's
we've also
your-
done
Not-
that as
not
well.
nice
That's
thing,
not
but
Yeah,
okay.
so-
So the last item, this is just words again, but I just want to make sure. So in the final part of the 2001 copy, the number 18, there, it's called amending bylaws. And in this new copy, it just says amendments. And it leaves out about a sentence worth of words. The new one says these bylaws shall be amended by a majority vote of the entire membership of the planning commission. Of the entire membership. Does that mean a quorum?
Entire membership means.
So it
entire
would mean
membership.
we would need all five votes here. Okay, and I remember that discussion now, thank you. In the old one, it said, provided that said notice of proposed amendments given to each member in writing at least 7 days prior to said meeting.
So you've got that covered under your requirement, that the agenda, under Article 4, that the agenda be given to you guys 7 days prior to the meeting.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, thank you for answering all those. Then I had from the March copy to today's copy, there were some words dropped out, just want to make sure they're not important. On section 3, if the end of that sentence says, should refrain from making motions and sign documents and okay, wait a minute. Let me just read the whole thing. The chairman shall preside at the meetings of the planning commission, may vote on matters coming before the commission, and should refrain from making motions and sign documents and contracts, and should refrain from making motions and sign documents and contracts when required. What was dropped off from the March document at the end was as authorized by the planning commission. That's been dropped off. We want that dropped? Okay. So, and if you guys, the rest of you have a problem with any of these changes, please speak up. I'm just trying to make sure we're not missing anything. Okay. All right.
One thing I would like to point out in that section 3, and it may just be more.
In section 3, you said, right?
Article 2, section 3.
Article 2, section 3.
Yeah, okay.
That sentence, the chairman shall provide at the meetings of the planning commission, may vote on matters coming before the commission, and should refrain from making motions and sign documents and contracts when required.
Yeah,
The
that's
transition from making motions and sign
Yes.
documents, you need to have some kind of transition in there, because it appears that you should refrain from signing documents, so I don't think that's the intent of that, so.
Maybe could we just move that and say, may vote on matters coming before the commission, comma, will sign documents and contracts when required, and should refrain from making motions? Can we just move that?
A move and should refrain from making motions to the end of the sentence?
Yeah,
Okay,
So nothing else follows it?
Okay, Sharon has a copy of what
Was amended.
Yeah, what was amended. So the way it had been previously amended, it's not in your hands right now. That
No, they have
sentence,
this in there.
this one with the change, as authorized by the planning commission.
We have
We have
three
three versions
three
here.
copies.
yeah, there's lots of versions, so.
We have the original plus the 2.
Okay, so the original can go away, because
Yeah,
that
we're
has
at-
been.
Yeah, that's,
That's
we're done with that.
Tossed out.
Now I'm
And then
comparing
and then
the
you
March
voted on the one in
packet.
February,
Yes.
Right.
and then it was
February.
amended again in March.
I don't think we amended in March.
You did.
You did.
I wasn't
Okay.
here, but y'all amended it in March.
It was
Okay,
amended in March.
all right.
So,
Come on down, Keith.
Like Keith?
Yeah, you can help us adjourn. Awesome.
And what was added in March was this.
So,
What was added in March was Article 10 about the conflict of interest, and then there was another proposed amendment for April. And that's when y'all got the letter from me that says, hold up, I haven't.
right.
Haven't
So
read this.
what do we, if in section 3 as it's listed here,
So
in our
what I have in
packet.
mind, if it's in my packet, had the wonky language would refrain from making motions and sign documents.
Yes.
What Ms. Armstrong has is the chairman. Okay, this will just.
I think my
just pulled out
versions are all
this.
mixed up now.
There's a lot of versions. That's why
All
I,
right.
that's
He
why.
asked last
I'm
month
gonna go
for
back.
every
All of them in there, but we
version.
know
That's
how this
great.
one was voted on last.
2011. This is the one that
Yeah,
was
we
voted
need it.
on last.
Okay, so the one then that was voted on last, that has section 3, the chairman shall provide at the meetings of the planning commission, may vote on matters coming before the commission, and shall have authority to sign documents and contracts when required as authorized by the planning commission. So that's the one that we need.
That's the one.
Okay.
That one.
So yeah,
That's
that,
what we want.
that
So
is good
mark,
language.
Okay.
that one, that's our go-to one
Right.
at this
Okay,
point.
so,
This is one we.
just to
yeah,
be
we're-
clear, because we're trying to approve an amendment, so what we're saying is, this section 3 from the March packet that you just read, Michael Brook, is what belongs in section 3 here.
The March, which meeting you came to?
The one
I
she
came
just
to
read.
February.
She came to the February meeting, so this was taken from the minutes of the meeting, and you adopted that language that she just read you.
Correct, yeah.
But that's not what's in our packet right now.
Actually, it is
It
in
is.
the,
We have both versions in the
the
packet.
third version.
Oh, we have 3 versions in the packet?
Yes,
you have three.
Article 2, Section 3 is what she just
Okay,
read in
just-
So
the
here,
third
so this
version.
is the packet, you're
Last
reading
month,
this,
you
this
asked
one, and this is, so this is the language in this.
Okay, all right.
So what we did was we removed shall refrain from making motions.
So you-
And
so
then we
you-
put it back,
You probably can take the one that has the highlighted part on it.
Right.
That should be the last adopted.
yes, okay.
Everything up to what
The
you were asked to
highlighted.
approve in March on the highlighted.
Okay,
Right,
so
so
now that's.
Marge was
okay.
like, okay, we went through there, this is what we came up with, and now we're looking at the final
Okay.
version,
All
which
right.
has the highlights on it.
Okay. So what, now we know which copy I'm
Okay.
on. So
we're
I got
all working
that.
on-
Probably should've
we're all
dated
working
it.
off the same highlighted.
Probably
It's
should
the
have
one with
dated
the
it.
highlighted last page was V 2.37, okay. All right, so I don't think there's anything above that. Do we have questions on anything above what we just did?
No.
I think there was the question over the conflict of interest section in
There is
section
a
10.
question over that, and then there is also a question over the public hearing wording. I think, are those the only 2 questions? I think we
Public
have.
hearing, I think.
I
No,
thought we
I'm
just
sorry,
discussed
against the, what do you call it when we have comment, public comment? There was a
So
question on that wording.
I had on my notes, I'm flipping back to the notes that I sent you guys in my letter that I sent in
Right.
May. Article 4. I suggest that language has that it says that the planning commission may appoint and it shall appoint and supervise, and I recommended changing that to may by virtue of the fact that y'all did not sign a contract directly with the planner. And so it makes it permissive rather than mandatory language. And
Okay,
it's
we're on
splitting
article-
hairs with-
Because the commissions only can sign the contract.
Right, right. If it would have made sense if you guys had signed the contract and allowed to have that be mandatory language, but since y'all opted to keep that as it had been with the town hiring, you can say, we may appoint a committee to do that. I remember at last month's meeting, you asked the Board of Commissioners, and I prepared an ordinance to this
Right,
end,
right.
to say that the supervision and direction for the city planner and the engineer that's advising the planning
Is
commission
through
will be at
the
the chair
chairman
or his designee.
or his
Right.
designee.
So that's why I suggested making this say may instead of shall.
You're talking about Article 4, Section 2?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Additional
So-
paying staff may be provided?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the planner and engineer shall serve as appointed staff support. I'm sorry, I'm in, make sure I'm reading it right.
So,
This version says shall.
Yes, and so,
We're talking about, her recommendation is to change shall to may.
Additional professional staff may be provided for the regional planning commission as determined by the planning commission,
So it
and
would be,
within the funds approved by the city commission.
But until they amend theirs, this section can't be amended until they pass it, because they're on first. Use a baseball term. If it's going to the city commission to establish the contract, and they're making the appointment, they set the salary, that this.
We're the recommending party.
I mean,
That's correct.
I think you can go ahead and change it to May tonight rather than waiting for 2 readings on
Yeah.
the ordinance.
That's-
Just simply
that's-
because you can opt to
Because
use
we are
that
the recommending
discretionary
party, and the
or
commission
not.
has to do it, and then.
But I think it needs to be, planning commission shall be provided for the Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission as determined by the planning commission. If you're removing the shall, then they don't have the authority
Additional
to
professional
determine.
staff
Additional
may be
professional staff may
provided
be
Now,
provided for
remember-
Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission.
The way that reads, additional professional staff shall be provided for the planning commission as determined by the planning commission within the funds approved by the city commission. That's directly taken from that statutory language where you all have authority to hire people. You all opted to keep it as it had been with the town hiring rather than you all directly. Y'all made that motion last week. So in this case, you can still keep that in there. You still have that statutory authority. It's just changing it to may, which means y'all can, decide later on to take advantage of those authorities, but it's not mandating that you do. I mean, in the legal world, there's a big difference between a shall and a may.
What if we go, additional professional staff may be provided for the Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission within the funds approved by the city commission as determined by the planning commission? I think that clarifies the statement, because it's, the planning commission as by the planning commission as whatever. If we rephrase it that way, it makes more sense. It says that we are going to have to wait for the city commission to make the decision, then we can determine based on that what the planning commission wants to
I think we need to carefully capture the language though, so if you're taking notes or.
do. It just seems, it feels like a cleaner sentence.
It's recorded, because that's what we had to do the last time.
We're not changing anything, it's just cleaner.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm-
Just need to get the language.
I'm
Just wanna
keeping
make
this
sure we're
bad boy.
recording
Did you write that down, Mike?
it.
I
Yeah,
did.
Yes, thank you.
thank you.
All we did was change shall to may and then remove that clause to the end.
Planning
That clause
commission,
being as determined
within
by
the
the planning
funds
commission.
approved by the commission as determined.
As determined by the planning commission.
Right.
Okay.
Got rid of the end.
Now, the public comment section, Martha Rucky had pointed out 2 recent statute changes.
Yes, so on that, which section is it? Yeah, let's get on that section.
It's down at the bottom.
Three,
Section 3.
Article
Oh,
Article
I'm sorry, yeah, Article 5, Section 3, public comments.
Okay.
5. Right below it.
Yes. So state statute requires this by any governmental body now, which would include this body, to allow for public hearings. You can make public comments. It does give you discretion for limiting the total time period or limiting the amount of time per speaker. It gives you discretion if you want to require people to register ahead of a meeting in order to be able to speak. You do have discretion in that, you just can't discriminate against what they're talking about. That gets into First Amendment issues. So you all obviously already have that in place. So that's good. I would just recommend that if you wanted to make any changes to that, you may want to go ahead and do it now ahead of when that becomes mandatory, so it doesn't look like you're doing anything retaliatory. There's a hot button issue that comes up. So that was really all I had last month when I brought that to y'all's attention. So
Okay, so my understanding based on what you brought to our attention was if we continue with public comments onto page 3, there are restrictions in Part B that says the chairman shall limit comments to agenda items to relevant, non-repetitive comments and shall restrict comments that are disruptive in nature. I thought you had pointed out that some of that has to be removed.
Right, so with First Amendment considerations, I would recommend striking the non-repetitive. I think, in my reading of that new law several times, I think relevant can stay in there, because I think that statute contemplates that you can make sure people are talking on content there, on the agenda. I think you can keep disruptive in there, within reason. You know, you may have somebody that comes in and makes threats. Clearly, you can stop that, or disparages somebody's reputation, etc. But I am a little bit concerned with the non-repetitive part of it. So you may encourage people, hey, you feel are all saying the same thing. You may want to give somebody else an opportunity to say something different, but don't settle down because they're saying the same thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, because they're all endorsing a concept, that's what they want us to hear.
Exactly.
You know,
And
so,
they may want to stand up and
okay, we
say,
heard that, the next 17 of you can go away, which, no, we need to hear all 17 and allow them to speak to it
Yes.
Yeah.
without being disruptive.
Right. And you could say, I understand you all probably likely have about the same thing to say. If you want to allow time for people who may have something in addition to what this person just said, you may want to say, anybody that agrees with what Joe just stood up and said, please raise your hand, and that way we know and can acknowledge that you're making a statement and
Right.
still leave time for other parties.
And it's
That might be how
part of the record.
Right, right,
So we know that 17 people felt that way, but 2 spoke.
right. But
Okay.
don't have Susie get up after John speaks, and Susie, you're saying the exact same thing, so that's repetitive, so sit down. That's where you're gonna run into First Amendment issues.
Right.
Yeah. Sharon, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I just think in the second one in B, I don't think that's the intent of the language. I actually read through the language that was taken from it. It was an example that Chairman Patton and I shared over a couple of weeks before we started the redraft, or before I started the redraft on this. Repetitive means I stood up, I spoke my piece. Now there are 12 other people who want to speak. I don't get to stand up again and speak my piece again.
So you're looking at it as
That's-
somebody
Time to
standing
the
That
up.
was the.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, we limit it to, thus
Each
far, we
person
have
gets-
always let one person speak, and when they're done, they're done.
They get 3
Right, but I'm
minutes.
saying, we had an occasion, Lauren, before you were on the planning commission, and I think it came up in this discussion for the bylaws, in this particular topic. Dave Northcutt had a
Oh, I remember that,
opposition.
yeah, right.
And this room had, I would say the fire marshal probably would not have been thrilled with the number of people in the room.
So I'm fine leaving out non-repetitive. though.
Yeah, like, I'm fine with it as long as there's a mechanism.
I think you've got it locked in because
For the first one, I
each speaker
think.
will have 3 minutes.
No,
Right.
no.
Unless that's extended by the chairman, but it was simply in the example language. And it was because, Lord, and it was in the growth area, and there were probably 25 people. It finally got
There was more than
the
25
meeting
people.
just had
There were a lot.
that spoke more
Yeah.
than once on the same issue over
Right.
and over again.
That's why we have the maximum occupancy sign now.
Right.
And see, I read it as
Actually, it is.
non-repetitive because I have been in meetings where we have said, if you're going to say the same thing that somebody's already said, please don't say it. And
Yeah.
that's the vein in which I was looking at.
Either
Okay.
way, they have the opportunity, and we give everybody 3 minutes, so,
Yeah.
removing it, I think, just removes the ambiguity
Right.
of how it could be handled by someone less diplomatic than you.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's a thank you. Mike, you're too indirect. Okay, I guess. So,
It's also true.
I think the next item was the conflict of interest language. And Mike Hargis had quoted from, was it the ethics statute? But when he quoted, at some point when we were going through all these copies, this whole paragraph disappeared. And then it came back. I thank God it's back, because I don't think we want to be disappearing that paragraph. But we want to change the language
So, my recommendation on
Is it in
this-
here?
You've got on your left side underneath
Oh,
the
okay.
email, there is a
Chapter 4, Code of Ethics.
Okay.
The language that is in there, and I realized that had been in the prior, to Lauren's point from last meeting, just because we've always done something in some way doesn't mean we need to keep continuing doing it that way. If that language that you've got in there is an absolute bar to voting on something, if you have a conflict of interest. State statute only has absolute bars on voting on things with conflicts of interest if you're directly interested in contracts that either you're voting on to approve or you're gonna supervise. And so that's under Title 12 and under Title 6 for municipalities, under state law. State law requires municipalities and other governmental entities to adopt a code of ethics. MTAS was charged by the General Assembly to develop and promulgate model ethics codes. This is it. The town of Kingston Springs adopted the model ethics code. It goes into definitions of what it means to be personally interested. You'll note on there, it kind of looks like, well, if you have a conflict of interest, then you can declare it and vote. That is true except where the state specifically bars a vote, which is only in the case of where you're interested in a contract that you supervise or can approve. So my recommendation to this body is rather than having an absolute bar on a vote, align your conflict of interest policy up with what state statutes and the model code as developed by MTAS say. And it could be something as simple as you'll have a conflict of interest paragraph that says conflicts of interest shall be defined and handled according to the code of ethics adopted in the municipal code.
I'm going to refrain from speaking before. Any of you have comments or questions about what Martha Brooks just covered?
Any personal interest that affects or that would lead to reasonable person to infer that it affects the official vote on the measure. 403.
Right, I see it. Second to the
That's-
last paragraph.
Yeah, they should disclose minimally, right?
If they have a personal interest.
Right.
That as defined.
That doesn't mean that they can't vote,
Correct.
but it means that they should disclose.
Kind of like when Mr. Hargis was in here that night when the church stuff came through.
And he said, "I'm a
disclosed,
member."
I'm a member. That technically probably is not a personal interest. He's not getting any financial gain. I mean, most churches ask for money all the time. But, he's not
See,
getting
I
financial
don't
gain
see personal
on
interest
that.
as financial gain.
Yeah, there can be more to
Right.
personal interest in
Right.
that. But that was a disclosure, but he still was allowed to vote on it. He was not
Sure.
voting on a contract
Sure.
that put money in his pocket or that he was going to supervise. That was prohibited by statute.
I like 1-403 being bylaws. That's my opinion as one of the commissioners here. I like our town, and I hate reading the news about this state. And I'd rather not say with reference to the ethics code. And to me that it may be printed here, but it becomes in my mind ambiguous because we don't have it before us.
Right.
I like the idea of that 1-403 sitting in here. And call it disclosure of personal interest by official with vote.
And I think that's fair. I mean, I really think that's fair.
I'd recommend putting 402, 403, and 404 in there because it defines what a personal interest is. It says you've got to disclose it. You can recuse yourself if you want to.
I'm fine with that too, but I like it being in the bylaws.
Yeah.
I like us seeing it.
And being very public.
Yeah. I don't think in the future, because this is so lengthy, that we need to include it in the agenda anymore, because it's a lot different than what we have.
Right.
And 404 also pulls in situations where you might not be voting on something, but you still may have an interest in it.
And I
that
think
needs
that's
to be
important.
disclosed as well.
I think that's
So,
important.
Right.
I agree.
So that's why I would recommend pulling in. If you're not going to refer to it by reference, if you actually want it in there, I would drop 402, 403, and 404.
I think we can still call it, can we still call it conflict of interest? Because I think that's what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
and then have those 3 paragraphs below that.
In the
as-
bylaws.
In the bylaws.
But do you want them in the minutes?
I don't think we need, I think it's big. Do you think it's okay to put them in?
No,
the-
I think it's too.
Too
big.
wordy.
Yeah, too wordy to put in the minutes. But I think it definitely needs to be in the bylaws, all 3 sections, yes.
And
Yeah.
you could even going forward have, just like you have meeting packets prepared, you could just have copies, 3 or 4 copies of the bylaws on your desk before
For
each
reference.
meeting. For reference.
I think that's a great
So
idea.
you're not
That's a
having to
great
total
idea.
back and
That's a
forth
great
each
idea.
time.
Yeah.
You know, we keep copies over here of subregs, of zoning ordinance, it's just one copy. But
Well.
as much as y'all are having, do we have a quorum? What do we do on that? It would be helpful
think
to
it's a
have
great idea.
copies, 2 or 3 of them
I
laying
think
around
that's a
for
great
y'all.
Just as a regular repeating, it doesn't have to be printed every time, but,
Right,
have it here as a reference document.
I agree.
So, I know we're gonna vote on this amendment at the end, but does anybody here in the commission have any problem with including this in our bylaws, paragraphs 1, 402, 403, and 404 as written?
I think it's a good
Put it
idea.
right in, under conflicts of interest? Okay.
I think it's an excellent idea.
Any other discussion on that Article 10, conflicts of interest? Okay, and then we had these 2 new parts which were highlighted. Article 11 and Article 12. They've been added since the last meeting, right? Martha, Brooke, and Sharon, do you both agree to those articles as they're written at this point in time?
I think Article 11, and Sharon pointed this out earlier this meeting, that's covered under y'all's, our zoning ordinances or subdivision regulations layout. Here's what's required when you submit something. So that's codified in that respect. It doesn't, it's duplicative to have it here, and at some point you wind up with having 2 or 3 different governing documents that may say different things because they didn't get caught up on the change.
Okay, and I was asking Sharon offline, you know, that had been in the original document, why we didn't have something, and you had explained it was in the zoning ordinance, but, okay, so,
So take out
Were you gonna
11.
say something, Sharon? You kinda looked like you were saying.
Part of the issue that we have could probably be done better with an administrative document. There are guidelines for submission by your applicants within your zoning ordinance. There are guidelines for submission by your applicants within your design review standards. There are guidelines for submission in your subdivision regulations. We don't have anything in a very clear methodology that says you have to get this on this, submitted to the staff for review by this time, or it's not going to be heard. And it's created conflicts sometimes for John and I, when somebody will drop something off and they don't hit it within the right time, and then we have advertising changes because we don't have a local newspaper anymore. All of these things kind of came together when we got really, really busy. And there was no one thing that lays out for this planning commission what the requirements are for you to submit, to just appear. So there has to be a methodology somewhere, whether it's an administrative document adopted by the city commission, or whether it's by the planning commission, but this body serves in some capacities, particularly with your subdivision regulations, that the city does not. Those are all planning commission, not the city commission. So you do those, you set the rules, you set all of that. So it was an attempt to clarify a topic that's not very well laid out in any place in the city.
but all I see this paragraph doing really is pointing us to the place where that exists.
Right.
In the subdivision regulation.
And these are your governance documents. These are not John Q. Public's requirements.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying, I don't think that's applicable here. Yeah, we,
In our bylaws.
it doesn't
Oh,
even be in your
because-
bylaws, because your bylaws tell you all how to conduct your meetings.
But we already have ordinances and other things
That tell the public.
that control.
That's
What
why I'm
it is that
saying
we're
maybe
discussing
a
here.
ready reference would be an easier way to get this in so that, you know, it's not in your bylaws. As Martha Brooke has said, you know, having your bylaws on the table is an assistance to you. But there are some things that the bylaws don't cover, like these paragraphs. So that when something comes up and someone's asking for a variance or someone's asking for something, what are the ground rules for you? So that we don't have to pull the book out.
So like a cheat sheet, so to speak.
Like a
that
cheat
pulls-
sheet.
Pulls key items
Yep.
out that we might routinely use.
Right, and
Okay.
it's something that comes up relatively frequently when someone asks, particularly with planned unit developments, for something that's not spelled out explicitly, and you're at that point making discretionary decisions.
So are we saying collectively
So-
we agree? Or
I think that what I gathered from that is remove it, but have some reference
Yeah.
to it available to the
Have a cheat
members.
sheet.
Right,
Yeah.
the cheat
Yeah.
sheet, whatever you want to do,
Right.
some way so
Yeah.
that when they bring it to you, there is certification on that document that they meet the requirements. So, rather than coming in the door and saying, well, I know I don't meet the requirements, but I just want to talk to them about it. And it puts you in a very awkward position of then having staff have to pull out a book and read it to you out loud in the meeting about what the requirements are.
Okay, and
So what if we just put the first, all project development plan submissions shall be submitted according to Tennessee statutes, local ordinance? Boom.
I mean,
Or
I still think that,
Just take it out.
yeah,
Mark,
I think.
we'll
just
take
take it
it out because it's administrative in nature rather
Oh, all right,
than
okay.
bylaw.
All right.
Yeah.
It's really not ours to handle anyway. It's
Oh, yeah,
gotta
it's
be-
yours to handle.
Well, it's gotta be handled before it's brought before the commission though.
Right, right.
There are procedures that have to occur.
Exactly.
All right.
so just strike it.
Okay, so we're
86,
striking
yeah,
11. What about the last article, number 12?
So my comment
We're out of
on
it.
this one
Get rid
is
of
that
it.
it actually is duplicative of what you've got in Article 9. Because Article 9, you've established where you can have oversight of the experts or persons that are providing services to you all. And that's discretionary and that may. You're also asking the Board of Commissioners to put in their ordinances that the chair or his designee will, direct and supervise that. So, if you've got a complaint that comes up, we've all been through this little road in the last 6 months, or most of us. That can be handled by this committee that you all have already established under Article 9. So that was just my comment on that.
Special
is it
committees.
seems duplicative and redundant to what you've already, the mechanism you've already created. And I think it's been working well I know y'all had some meetings.
Yeah. This was put in before last month, obviously, and submitted to you because there was not a methodology at that point that was adopted at the last meeting to resolve it. So I'm ambivalent one way or the other. You didn't take it out.
So Sharon, do you feel then that Article 9
Addresses the issue.
addresses the issue?
I did.
Okay.
I think that was well.
So does anybody else have a problem with striking 12? Okay. So, to the other commissioners, is there anything else in this recommended amendment that you want to ask about?
No, I believe you found it all.
Don't you think? Okay, so the piece of paper before us, and I'm thinking, you can take a picture if you want. This is what we have modified. We have modified Article 4, Section 2, changing the word shall to may, and moving the clause as determined by the Planning Commission to the end of that sentence. Right, that was Article 4, Section 2. We, under Article 5, meetings, Section 3, public comments, sub-paragraph B, we struck the word non-repetitive. Okay, and then we struck Article 11 and Article 12, and that's all I have in terms of changes we discussed.
Or we-
Talk about the article.
And
ethics,
definition
ethics.
Including,
Ethics, let me write that in, thank you.
conflict of interest.
Conflicts of
1402,
interest.
1403, 1404.
Change, thank
Add
you,
that to Article 10.
to 1402, 3, and 4. Keep this bad boy with this too. Okay. All right. So I think we have a motion, or want a motion to approve this draft of the bylaws of the Town of Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission as amended in this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Do you have a question or comment?
All I was gonna say on Article 10 is, and this is just for everyone's reference, is in my more than decade serving on boards in this town, I have not voted on a single item that I had any hint of a conflict with, and it didn't change the way the vote went a single time. It would have made no difference. So as just a personal reference to yourself, you might want to just do that as a practice. I've just made that my practice. Like if there's any doubt in
absolutely. I mean-
anybody's mind that I don't want there to be any doubt in anyone's mind that I voted on something that personally could benefit myself, and I just never have. And the votes have always gone how they were gonna go. So,
Well, I think in speaking to the mayor's point, I think the state, when we train on this particular topic, their verbiage is avoiding the appearance of impropriety.
yeah.
Exactly.
That's the language that. and
I think
Lauren, I'm
that's
sure
really
you've heard
important.
100 times, I have too.
Very
And it
important.
affects the culture if it's not in there. So
I guess we didn't vote, so I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion
We had a
and a
motion
second.
and a second,
Did
I
you get
believe,
those,
right?
Sean?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so all in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Aye. Any opposed? Keith, did you say aye?
I don't know if I can.
Oh, Keith, I never read it into the
Never
meeting.
read it into the meeting.
Okay, all right, well, thanks for being here. So, it passes unanimously.
We've got a majority of the entire board, even without Keith. passing.
Right,
So
yes.
that makes your.
It was
was-
unanimous
yes, it was
pass,
unanimous.
and
Okay. All this other stuff.
do we have any other for discussion?
Other discussions? Oh, sorry.
We haven't adjourned yet.
Yeah, I haven't adjourned, sorry. So, thank you, Tom. Any
All
other
right, we all want to
discussion?
adjourn too.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second? We have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.